Hello, everyone. We are live. You don't know what's been happening for the last 15 minutes, but it's been very exciting. I'd like to thank Virtual School for training me to be the crappy IT person. We are now live. I hope you've been enjoying the Philadelphia, the Jewish Film and Media Fest. Yeah, go Jews, go media, go film. We're so happy that you're here joining us. We've got a few people whose faces may or may not look familiar to you. I am your host, Amanda Marks, and I was one of the storytellers also. I'm a stand-up comedian. I have a podcast called Sis and Tell, as in sister, not as in cysts. People get confused. But I would love to introduce you to our panel of participants in this lovely Q&A. You have just watched the live stream of the BESHERT Romantic Destiny showcase that was curated by our very own Shellie Schmals from Roxie Burlesque. Woo! Let's give it up in our boxes. If you're at home. That's right. So there's a little background on Shellie. She's in addition to executive producing the show today, she's also the film programming manager for the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival since 2014. She has 25 years of experience in the nonprofit universe. What? That is a lot. That's like a whole person's worth of experience. And she's also a talent wrangler, producer, an MC. She's an artist extraordinaire. What can't Shellie do? I don't know. You should see her closet. It's amazing. Also, that's just a side note. So get to know her.
And play in my closet.
That's right. We also have Vandellous joining us. If you were able to check out her performance, she's a burlesque performer, aka Frankie, with a career spanning Canada, Australia, and the U.S. There's no telling where this performer stores her dirty laundry. Vandellous loves to create performances that delight, surprise, and unsettle. So strap in, strap on, and get ready for the Canadian hotness of burlesque. The moose with the caboose, the grass Canuck, the pound beaver, Vandellous. And finally, we've got Caroline Hawthorne, who I was very lucky to actually meet in person last weekend at the Ladies' Night Comedy Festival in New York. Caroline, she says she's up and coming, but I think she is up. There's no coming. She is there. You want to?
There will be no coming when I'm around. Oh, God.
She's a singer. She's an actress. She's a musical comedian from Los Angeles. And she recently premiered in her one-woman show, The Slutty Virgin, at the Playground Solo Festival in San Francisco. And she's currently, and I think this is really cool, a Steel City AF grantee under Steve Hotstetter, who is a very well-known comedian. And we've got Rusty, who may or may not join us, but he created Mate, which was the stop motion animation.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear Rusty, but Rusty, you're there? Okay, so
I am here.
Evidently, we can only show 4 faces. So Rusty,
okay.
you're just in the audio.
Oh, believe me, that's best for everyone, honestly. Yeah.
And it's best because Rusty is in the middle of being frisked by TSA at the airport. And Rusty, who you can hear, he has a BFA in animation from the University of the Arts. He's a working artist and independent animator out of Philly. And while he doesn't work with a steady team, he has the honor of bringing in so many gifted people from all backgrounds. And I know we're going to love to hear about all the people he works with and the people he worked with to make Mate happen. So let's get started, y'all. Let's get started. Shellie, you put together this whole thing, and I would love to hear from you on just, did you come up with the theme? Was it given to you? And how did all of this happen?
It really goes back to knowing Olivia and Kristen at the Philadelphia Jewish Film and Media Fest. We became fast friends just through going to a few different conferences together, and knowing that I'm in Atlanta, they're in Philadelphia, we wanted to be able to curate something and really kind of, work together. And so they came to me with this idea of having burlesque in their festival. I guess it was maybe around like January or February. And from there, it kind of went through a couple iterations, but then we kind of solidified on the theme of BESHERT and love, because it's universal. And it's something that, we wanted this to be a culturally and religiously diverse type of short film showcase. And so to bring in burlesque and storytelling and film, love kind of just seemed like the natural starting point. It's universal through all languages, through all mediums, and it really gave our content creators a really good strong starting point to really be able to tell their own story in diverse ways, because love is a very individualistic and unique experience. And so to see the way that everybody's kind of taken the theme and kind of run with it, and to see the type of submissions that we got from all over was really, just inspiring.
So speaking of burlesque, which is, also there's so much storytelling that goes on in there. And I'm just curious to know, like, what is the history of burlesque? How has it evolved over the years? Like, where did it originate from?
Well, it started all the way over in England, probably like the mid 1800s. I think it was Lydia and her dancing blondes, or fabulous blondes, and forgive me. I've kind of been drinking NyQuil all weekend, having a head cold, so my history is a little revisionist. But it's been around for a really long time, and burlesque, goes into that long history from actually being a parody of the political times of the 1800s, and it really spoke to, burlesque was a performance of the people. It was something that the people could really make a burlesque or a commentary about social norms or social situations, to becoming, something that got woven into, going from, I'm not sure so much of Yiddish theater, but maybe vaudeville is really kind of the way to go from, like, the path from, like, burlesque shows and theater to weaving into vaudeville, which is also where stand-up comedy really came from, was the vaudeville era. So that's, in my roundabout way, this is the history of burlesque, but definitely there's a lot more informative sources that you can Wikipedia and Google search after this, after my TED Talk. But yes, that's the long and the short of it.
And I noticed in the 3 different burlesque performances that there seemed to be, like, different types of choreography woven into each of those. Vandellous, can you talk about some of your inspiration? And I know you mentioned, and I may be mispronouncing this, that Butoh is a part of that. Am I mispronouncing that?
You're not that is exactly how it's pronounced. Butoh.
Okay.
Yeah, so my background and my way into burlesque is a little different. I'm originally an actor, a physical theater trained actor, and I packed up my life in Canada and moved to Australia to join a theater company because I fell in love with Butoh, and other people might be familiar with Suzuki and Viewpoints, which I think the home of Viewpoints is pretty much New York, and I then decided to quit performing for a little while, and I did a master's degree in occupational therapy. And ironically, while I was doing that, I turned to something else that would scare me, which was burlesque. So I was taking burlesque classes while I was doing my studies, and burlesque was a great platform. I'd prior been acting other people's stories and telling other people's stories, and burlesque was an opportunity for me to do solo work about things that I cared about, and looked at ways of incorporating. I don't feel like I'm a very classic performer. I rarely feel very sexy, but I'm really interested in grotesque, political, and anything that involves the body is political, and about culture and society, and also what gender means and what it means to have people project their assumptions about life you should be living based on who you present. And so I love incorporating the grotesque or the uto elements that are slow can be very, very durational work into this burlesque form, and kind of playing with character and playing with pushing the boundaries of what people might think of when they think they're going to see a burlesque performance.
So traditionally, when burlesque performers, are they choreographing all of their own movements, or is it ever co-produced together with someone else who comes up with the choreography, or are we seeing like this is their personal story, these are their opinions being expressed through this movement?
It does depend. So when I was taking classes, I was being taught choreography, and we would have opportunities to do group performances. And then when I started doing my own, I actually worked with a group of 2 other individuals. We were the Sweet Cheeks, and so we would choreograph our own stuff that tickled our funny bone. And then also at the same time, I started to branch out and do my own solo work. So all of that is either as part of a trio, we were creating choreography ourselves, or I create my own. But there are definitely performers who will work with a choreographer. That's, so it really depends on the individual. And what I love so much about burlesque, I think the point is that each performer is so unique. And so like if you're going to see Vandellous perform, you have an idea of what Vandellous is like. Great. If you're going to see someone else perform, you kind of know what they're going to bring to the stage. And so some people are very, very dancery and their background is dance. Others are very, very like face and character acting and do a lot of that kind of work. Some people like to integrate circus. I integrate wax clay. And so it's a great platform for people to bring what's unique about them, because really it is about telling stories, and everybody and every body is a different story on stage. Yeah.
So Caroline, you are a musical comedian. And first of all, this Q&A panel has been sponsored by Famous Amos and Capri Sun. Just kidding. They have not sponsored it. Sponsored by Seltzer.
Sponsored by Seltzer, yeah.
But I would love to know more about your background and how you got to where you are.
It all began when I was born. When I escaped my mother's uterus and thought, this is it. No. So I primarily started out as an actor and a classical singer. I'm a classically trained mezzo-soprano. And I was getting my BFA in acting. And I was a sophomore in college, and I go to my acting professor / mentor, and I'm like, I'm not getting cast. What do I do? Like, what's up? And he's like, well, you're a very different performer, so people aren't going to always know what to do with you. And he said, have you ever tried stand-up? And I said, I tried it once before when I was in 6th grade, and I'm not good at it. And he said, here's a book. You should try it again. I did not read the book, but
did you see the movie? Yeah.
Yes. I don't even remember what the book was. If my professor is watching this, he knows who he is. I'm very sorry. But he's not watching this. But since I came from a musical background, like I had tried regular stand-up, but it just didn't really fit with me. But like after seeing people like Bo Burnham and just other like Garfunkel and Oates, I looked at them like, oh, like this seems like the best combination of my talent. So I started writing musical comedy songs, and I've been doing that ever since.
And is your one woman show that incorporates music as well?
Yeah, it has a bunch of musical comedy shows. It's musical comedy. It's primarily a musical comedy. Yes.
And Rusty, I'm going to give you a second to unmute. There's so much. So Rusty created Mate with the shopping carts, but you have. Do you have an entire series of shorts focusing on shopping carts as like this character?
Pretty much. Well, all different characters, but that is sort of my only focus for my independent work. It was just an idea that, I mean, every animator wants to create a character and make a series, you know? So I kind of...
Uh-oh. I think we've got some feedback. Sounds like a jet engine. I don't know.
Sorry about that. Let me turn my volume down a little bit, maybe. All right. So it was an idea that came about just from seeing shopping carts in places where they didn't belong. And, can you hear me?
Yes, but I don't know if that's coming from, the feedback's coming from your environment or someone else.
There's nothing going on here.
Okay.
Well, anyway.
Just keep on keeping on, Rusty.
Just from seeing shopping carts in places where they didn't belong and then starting to apply certain emotions to the situations that they were in. And then it evolved even more from that into let's start making stories and start making funny situations and things for them to get into and actually giving them different personalities and stuff. So, I mean, I always try to keep socio-political commentary pretty low out of my work completely. But there's some major undertones with this choice as a character that I think are kind of unique and very much, you know, there's sort of these symbols, these genderless symbols that can also sort of become characters. You know, I love giving life to inanimate things. I think that's the whole purpose of animation. So.
I did, and you did an incredible job of creating personalities with the shopping carts. Can you talk a little about how do you do character development, or do you like write out what their personalities are going to be like, or how do you
Yeah, well, this story was kind of simple. So there was basically like one really excited lonely cart looking for a partner, and there was one sort of like duplicitous, mean, leave you hanging type of other cart, you know, that pretends like it likes you but doesn't, you know. So those were like the two main characters, and then the third character was really just the person that's been there all along. You know, it sort of represented that in the end. So, and the story actually evolved over time. It was originally going to be a study set in the wild, sort of like a David Attenborough narrated wildlife situation, showing the mating rituals of shopping carts.
There's Rusty. We see you now.
Oh, okay.
So don't pick your nose, because we can see everything now.
So all of the blue ones, you know, it would be narrated to describe how the blue one tries to win over another blue cart. But then it just kind of spun off into this thing where they were actually having like more personalities and things like that.
So how the process of stop motion animation, this was about like a 5-minute film, but how long did it take to create 5 minutes?
It was about 4 months of shooting. It was about a year altogether, just from like concept to final edit. But
did you,
the
shooting, you storyboard everything?
Usually every shot, yeah.
Yeah.
Very quick, rough sketches, very geometric. Everything's like simple geometry. So the storyboards are relatively easy, especially for this one, because everything is very stagey. It's kind of just like a silent film almost. It's just a flat camera, no movements, and the characters are just moving around on their own. I wanted them to be like the focus, and I didn't want the camera doing anything funny because, it would kind of take away from the fact that these carts are moving around on their own. And I don't know, I didn't want to get too technical with camera movements for this one in particular.
Well, I have to say, I really bonded with that shopping cart.
That's the idea.
Yeah, it was like the whole like unrequited love thing going on. I feel like a lot of people have experienced. Is that something that in your personal life that you kind of brought like a teeny bit of a story from your life and brought it into that?
I mean, it's nothing in the present. I think it might have been based on, everything's kind of has a piece of you in it, I think, whenever you make anything. But it wasn't really like a sort of an ode to any situation in my personal life. It was just sort of a fun idea that I thought a lot of people would be able to relate to. And when you're introducing new characters like shopping carts with no eyeballs, or, they're not animals, they're not humans, it's hard to get people into it. So it was kind of like a soft, easy way to get people to ease into this idea and think that it's kind of cool. So that way they look forward to the next one. That's the whole plan.
Yeah. So I was thinking about how many people must have been on that shoot. You obviously didn't have to deal with actors. And if it was shot during, was it shot during the pandemic?
Yeah. Everything was just ghost town. So that made it kind of easy. I had one assistant for this. That's it. And one security guard. Yeah, so it was kind of a one-man show.
I saw the thank you to security. That was in like the sketchy area. So
they help immensely.
Yeah. So Caroline and Vandellous, I would love to hear from you and Shellie, like as performers during the pandemic. How did that affect you, and how has that changed what you're doing now? Has it changed your art form, either for you or you're seeing like your own industries?
I feel like a completely different person now, to be quite honest, a completely different artist, because actually I hadn't done stand-up for 2 years. I mean, about a year or 2. So I did it on and off, but like not full time. But then the pandemic happened, and then I started doing it full time over Zoom. Like my one-woman show was actually completely over Zoom.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like it's a completely different person and artist than I was when I first entered the pandemic. So,
was it hard for you not getting the same sort of feedback that you get from a live audience when you did that show through Zoom?
Mean, it was. I appreciate it because, like, I just got to do it in the comfort of my parents' bedroom. They did not watch the show. I should mention that. No, but it was nice. But, like, it actually wasn't until I started, like, I was okay with it because I was just feeling a little bit burnt out. And I was like, I'm okay with, like, not having feedback and all that. But then it wasn't until actually when I started performing in front of live audiences again that I was like, oh, God, this is just infinitely better in every way. It's just always better to perform live and to, like, truly get that feedback to know that this is good, this works. So,
and do you like do you see yourself pursuing more virtual shows, even when as things are going back to being in person?
If the opportunity is offered, I would still love to do virtual stuff. I mean, always live, there's nothing quite like live, but there is something beautiful about virtual because people who just would never get to see theater or just don't have access to it, they can like sit in their rooms and watch a show now. And that's such a beautiful thing. Like people got to see my show that like probably would have never been able to see it if it hadn't been online. So no, I would like to work virtually again if the opportunity comes up. Yeah.
And Vandellous, how has this affected you and the burlesque in general?
Well, I wear a lot of hats. So I have a theater company, and our show literally closed the beginning of March. So luckily, but I ended up doing a live show through Zoom. So we set out to break Zoom because we were like, how do we stream this live? We're recording it. Terrifying to have a cast phoning in from their homes, and we did do two or three shows. Really, it went off really well, and then of course we did the recording of it. But generally, I had decided I wasn't going to do burlesque online because I had nowhere to perform at the time, and I didn't really feel like taking my clothes off in my bedroom and sort of sending off a tape. But I then started to do more Butoh work, and so it did give me the opportunity to. I was part of the Unfixed Festival, which is a Butoh festival out of Edinburgh, but there's a New York component, and so I knew some folks that told me about it, and I got to be part of that. And so in the middle of me going, I'm not going to do this pre-taping thing, I then of course immediately started doing that, and kind of zigged and zagged, and then it wasn't so scary, and I just needed to go somewhere else for a little while and do a different kind of work for a little while. And now I'm finding more spaces that I can go and tape in where it still feels sort of safe enough to go in there and be able to do that. But the ongoing issue in a place like Atlanta is access to space. And with the epidemic, a lot of places have shut down, and then a lot of places are purchased and then knocked down. And so it is sort of forcing a lot of artists to have to get creative or have to go look elsewhere just because of affordability and looking for those spaces you can go rent, where you can go film and be able to keep making work. So that is an ongoing challenge for sure.
And did you, I know with stand up when I did virtual shows, I would just, I'd see people like in the chat typing things, but that's where like the acting part of me would come in, right? I would be like, I'm just going to pretend like they're laughing.
Yeah.
Because I need that feedback. That's why I do stand up, because I want to hear people laughing at me. And I had to rely on the checkout lady at Target to listen to my jokes. But from like a burlesque perspective too, like, are you feeding off of the audience's reactions?
Very much so. I mean, we get better when people scream louder and throw more money at us. So all of that is gone, right? And there's something about like performing to the green light that is my video camera right now, right? And so there is, like, in some ways we've gotten to be more creative. Like I invested in color changing light bulbs, and so something I had like mood lighting that I've never had before. And of course, working with film, you can direct the eye a little bit more, or do your own close up, or what have you, which is very different to being on a stage. And of course, again, I mean, we're stuck with the spaces we can act that, right? Accessibility becomes a thing. So there were ways to get more creative and embrace what we could do, but it is really different. And I've performed in front of audiences that aren't burlesque audiences. They might be more like spoken word audiences, and it's like performing to the void. There's just this chasm and this silence, and it is a little odd taking your clothes off and just having everybody like appreciate you silently. Because these vaudeville styles, like comedy and drag and burlesque, it's not like we can see the audience, right? We see you. There is no hiding behind a fourth wall like there is even in, say, theater or like dance or like very classic styles of performance. And so it is I'm interested to hear other people's experiences with this, but I found it really, really hard to go online. Also in teaching, because I teach voice and movement and acting, and it's different when I do one-on-one, but when I was doing group classes, everyone kind of went very passive, and it was very, very hard to get a read on how people were taking in the material. And they're in their own homes, and some people don't feel comfortable making weird sounds in their own homes, and they might have housemates or family, right? So it is odd taking something that is such an intimate and such a communicative style, and to shift it into a different media for sure.
And Shellie, how about you? How has it changed? I mean, and you do so many different things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my worlds like pivoted greatly, especially in the film festival industry. I mean, having gone from being such a, a theater driven in-person experience to, having to pivot to online programming and virtual cinema was definitely a challenge. But, working for AJFF, we found some really interesting and innovative ways to kind of make that change. For me personally, I did probably the one thing I hate to do because I was so like creatively dormant is I actually cleaned and I like purged, and I got like every weekend I would just spend like one weekend like focusing on one corner of my of my loft to get rid of like 14 bags of paper that have been like living with me for 20 years. And, that's how desperate, like, and creatively, like, dormant I was. But the good thing was out of that, I was able to really watch what everybody else was doing. And I kind of got, a good feel of what was going on with, the film world and the burlesque world and the comedy world, to see just how creative everybody, was from there. Also, I did more, I was getting more into and delving more into the pinup community that I'm a part of as well. So photo shoots, were much more easier to do. For a while, I was working with the Atlanta Artist Center and putting together models for Zoom live drawings. So like a model would, be selected and we would get artists to do like, drawing sessions. So that was something interesting I'd never done before, but that I was able to kind of, explore during the, I guess the more like insular inside days of the pandemic. Not that they're not still inside days.
Yeah.
But but through all of that, Roxie Roz had a few outdoor shows, but kind of similar to what Vandellous said, it's more fulfilling, especially with burlesque, to be in front of an audience. And so until we find again a venue that that we'd like to work at, for now, having this opportunity with the Philadelphia Jewish Film and Media Fall Fest has just been amazing. And for it's something that I would love to do more of, is bring burlesque into different mediums, more film festivals. That way we can I guess bring out awareness of this, storytelling element and how it can mix with other genres. I think in Atlanta, we're very lucky. Amanda and I have worked on burlesque and comedy shows before. Ian Aber and Annie Lockwood and I, we run an ABCD show, which is a burlesque comedy drag show. And, always at our Roxie Roz shows too, we try and bring in that element of comedy and drag and burlesque, and different live music and just different mediums to be able to enjoy entertainment together.
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention being Jewish, because this has been part of a Jewish film and media fest. And how has Judaism like affected your art? Anyone's welcome to answer. Caroline.
How has it affected my art? It was actually I went to college in Oklahoma City, because I grew up in Los Angeles in a pretty Jewish neighborhood, and I was like, I'm Jewish, but it wasn't until I went to a Methodist school where it was maybe I was one of 10 Jews on campus that I actually started really investing in my Judaism, where I came from. It's just because there is anti-Semitism in the comedy community, which can be very upsetting, and it just makes me want to talk about Judaism more and think about Judaism more.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because it's so Caroline and I did this comedy festival in New York, and I grew up Jewish in Alabama, and I perform in Atlanta, but I'm like a novelty here. Like, there's not a lot of Jewish comedians, but going to New York, it was like,
oh, you're that, yeah.
If you weren't Jewish, you're married to a Jew, your best friend's Jewish, you're like, everyone like incorporated it somehow. And it was so like the novelty of me was I was Southern. It was so interesting to just the dichotomy between performing in New York and Atlanta. But I'm curious to know, like, what what have been your the anti-Semitic incidents that you've experienced? Is this in LA?
Luckily not LA, but like sometimes over Zoom, sometimes in mics. It's like, it is amazing how non-Jewish people think that they can make jokes about Jewish things.
Yeah.
And you're like, because sometimes in the past I've been like, oh, I just won't say anything, but now I'm like, screw it. If someone says something anti-Semitic, of course I'm gonna call it out. It's
right.
like, because it's not okay. So
even I think audience members,
Yeah.
like I have like your show Slutty Virgin. I'm sure people have said some ridiculous things to you, and you're like, wait a second, I'm on stage. We are no longer on stage. You don't have like I've had guys say like gross things to me. They think that they have that I've opened the door because I might tell a joke on stage that then then you can get text messages or direct messages from someone saying something that's totally inappropriate.
Well, I think it's because like when you are an artist or a comedian or just, if you do share personal aspects of your life on stage, I think suddenly people feel like that they are connected to you and that they can share intimate things about themselves with you or text you inappropriate things. And you're like, like off the stage, I'm somebody else. Like, please leave me alone.
Yeah. I'm sure in burlesque it happens tenfold.
Yeah, it does. I think Caroline, you hit like the major point. Like you're on stage, you're somebody, but off stage, you're somebody else. And like, and I think for me with, I grew up very, Jewish community, Jewish. I didn't go to Hebrew school, but like I always belonged to the Jewish Center, was like a BBYO kid. It's in my heart. And so my Jewish identity has always been there. And then, I ended up basically having my career mostly in the Jewish community. So it's, I feel like maybe it was inevitable. And it, kind of runs in my family too. I have my great cousin, something or other, has like a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which I thought was, okay, well, maybe I'm destined for this. And like I have a cousin who is a cabaret singer in New York. Again, like it's
That's
just how like surrounded me. But for my own sensibility, I just kind of feel like it's informed maybe my humor and the way I look at different situations. So, and maybe my approach to burlesque and comedy itself has always been more of the, more of like the like vaudevillian kind of like, aw shucks kind of thing. I think that's kind of how I looked at it for myself and how I approach it.
Is there like I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if y'all can hear that. It's gone. I'm just hearing things now. But is there like a Jewish burlesque performer from decades ago that's like well known? Or do you know the history of Jews in burlesque?
For 9:30 on a Sunday night, my brain is a little bit fuzzy.
No, if you don't.
I know that there are. I just am not.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. We'll Google.
We'll Google. Check the Google. But we do have a beautiful, there is an amazing Jewish burlesque community out there. In 2007, I saw Good Jewish Girls Gone Bad. I believe the name of the cabaret was at a Hillel International conference when I was staff there. But
wow.
There's the Schlepp sisters out of New York. There's a whole bunch of contemporary Jewish burlesque performers. Trixie Minx in New Orleans is amazing. Blue Indigo, or Indigo Blue, who's also been Burlesque Hall of Fame. There are definitely so many, inspiring and amazing burlesque, Jewish burlesque performers.
Well, Caroline, in your bit, you mentioned your least favorite Jew.
Oh boy. Okay. Here we go. Okay.
Who is your favorite Jew, and is it a comedian?
Who is my favorite? I'm my own favorite Jew.
There you go.
There we go. Who are my favorite? My best friend Mandy, probably one of my favorite. Should probably mention my mother. That'd be a good person to mention. My brother's the only Jewish man I like. So yeah. But my favorite Jewish comedian, because we're talking about influences, like Rachel Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh yeah,
absolutely, 100%. Like, I think after seeing her stuff,
she's
I was
incredible.
like, oh, she's absolutely, like, I would consider her probably my greatest influence
Yes.
at this point, because the way, like, she has this incredible song in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, like, Remember That We Suffered. It's such, what an incredible song about the Jewish experience. What an incredible song.
She's incredible.
She's amazing, yeah.
So you're doing some incredible things right now. Can you tell everyone about the Steel City? I'm assuming the AF means as
Arts Foundation, yeah.
Oh.
No, but like,
see, this is why I can't be in charge.
We're aware of what it's supposed to be. Steel City Arts Foundation, run by Steve Hofstetter. It's very funny. He's a Jewish comedian who bought a church, and now we all, yeah, and I'm also Jewish. But obviously, but like he chose 3 comedians. I applied. We started at 15 semi-finalists, then 6 finalists, then 3 comedians, and each of us stays here for a certain period of time to, like, we have our rent paid for, and we just spend our time working on our comedy. So I have the 6-month residency. So I've been living in Pittsburgh. I only have 2 more months left here to just work on my comedy and to just figure out that comic lifestyle. So
are you guys workshopping on stuff together, or what does that mean to work on your comedy?
Work on our comedy, like go to gigs. Like I spend most days writing. I tour with the other comedians quite a bit. My other 2 roommates, Kevin Eggleston and Joe Harmon. We do shows with Steve sometimes. I'm going to Ohio in a day or 2 to do a guest spot for Steve. So that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah.
So when you're done with this, this period, living in the church, what's on the horizon? Are you working on another one-woman show?
No, I would like to. I actually do want to do. I particularly want to do a show about Judaism. That's actually what I really want to do next. I'm thinking of doing a show called Hebrew School Dropout. So, yeah, that's what I would like to do next.
I love it. And then, are you going to take Slutty Virgin? Are you gonna tour with that?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we ever return to the Slutty Virgin, because it's difficult to continue calling yourself a slutty virgin when you've been in a relationship for 3 years. So, yeah, we'll see. Because like I wrote I'm 24 now. I wrote the show when I was 21, and I finally got to do it, and I did it live. And I was like, there's some material that I'm still proud of, but other parts of it that I'm like, this just doesn't really reflect what I have to say about the world anymore.
Right.
So we'll see. Like, I mean, that's just the beauty of your art that nobody talks about. Like, your art grows with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to bury it.
Yeah. The Slutty Virgin must die. There we go.
You have to say goodbye.
Unless somebody pays me to put it on, then I will gladly do it again.
Right. It's like people are, always ask about the content and what material I choose. And I don't like to do anything topical because then it's like vapor. It disappears. But also,
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but so is like your life experience. You're right. Because like one moment, like that's totally relevant to how you're feeling. And then it feels played out or like just not relevant to who you are anymore.
Absolutely.
I love that. Like, I feel like artists don't talk enough about the fact that you start somewhere and you might look back on say 5 years ago and going like, oh my goodness, but that's the point. And I know this is often talked about for comedians because of course everything lives on the internet and there may be like a shift or like I wouldn't have made that joke if I was doing it now or what have you. And I mean, there are just terrible artists sometimes, but there's also, there is something to be said for, I mean, we talk about this in Burlesque. There are people who go, I have an act I would never do again. Like what I know now, I won't, and we talk a lot about like cultural appropriation, for example, things like that. And that's very, very prevalent in the burlesque community. And it's, there is something to be said about having the discussion and also being able to get better. And I mean, that's what we got to do
Right.
as artists, right? Yeah.
And Vandellous, you mentioned your theater company. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So after many, many years of people telling me to make a theater company and me fighting, when I was in Atlanta, I just felt that there wasn't a lot of physical theater here, and there wasn't something that was making stuff as weird and wonderful as I was living in my head. So Burning Bones Physical Theater now exists, and it's predominantly, I'll say, Butoh inspired work. But we'll work, so the first show we ever did was a Pinter's One for the Road, and we really explored the sort of the white supremacy angle of it, and incorporated Butoh performances in it, even a little bit of burlesque at the end, I'll actually say. And so we took this very short play and sort of extended it out into an hour-long show, and people were really moved by it. And also, I'm really interested because I have a teacher side in the process. So there is training involved in the rehearsal process. I teach Fitzmaurice voice work, and Lawn and Butoh and other forms of physical performance. And there's ways to do work or difficult subject matter in a way that it doesn't have to be torturous on the performer. And so we actually had a lot of fun, a lot of laughter and playfulness, but the work was heavy hitting. And then we did Too Far for Comfort, which was a Zoom performance, and that was original work. So everybody wrote monologues and scenes, and so the premise was that we were in a apartment, or we're all in our own apartments in a building waiting for the end of the world. So you might as well wait it out here. And so these snapshots of how people are handling that kind of feeling of like in between, and sort of the feeling that the world is ending, but it's kind of like the Waiting for Godot type of moment. Like we're sort of stuck in this waiting period, but we're not going anywhere good. And that was such a joy, and I never thought I would be interested in doing an online kind of live theater piece, and I learned a lot, and it was such a beautiful way to keep working together. And then kind of coming out of COVID, we're not really out of it, are we? But going back into a little bit of live performance or socially distanced performance, my sort of partner in crime in Burning Bones, Jace Wingate, and I were doing a lot of very Butoh and burlesque inspired pieces around the theme of hysteria. So we're reading these stories about women, and at the time that psychology was coming up, photography was coming out. And so these women, photographers would go into hospitals and basically have these women perform hysteria for the camera. And so, and of course, we were going through our own hysteria and sort of trying to make work that was feeling supportive of the major life changes that we were going through. And so that's an ongoing series, and we've gotten to do it like at 7 Stages, which is a theater locally here, and we've done it sort of different capacities. That's been really interesting, and we're not done yet, but it's been interesting watching that series grow.
Just getting started.
Getting started, exactly. Yeah.
Shellie, what's on the horizon for you?
So I'm on the board of Women in Film and Television Atlanta, and we have our gala coming up in December. So it's going to be virtual and in person. So that's really what I'm working on. And actually tomorrow we'll be launching our our call for scholarships. So if you are a female college student in Atlanta who wants to know the film and television industry, we have a scholarship waiting for you. So just follow the WIFTA, Instagram and Facebook page, or email me at shellie@wifta.org, and I will send you an application. So that's what's next. That's the immediate next.
That's awesome. And
can I get one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at talking about a thing that's happening in the future. I prefer to talk about the thing when it's already created. But I'm heading a project. We're doing an adaptation of Trojan Women, and it's going to basically be a project that starts in the middle of next year and will go up in the middle of the year after, 2020. Where were we? Yes, 2023. And it's the the point is looking at the story about the fall of Troy and what happens after, which centers around the women. But we're telling it from the perspective of gender and sexual minorities. So non-binary performers, trans men, women, and because of course we've seen that in times of pandemic and economic and social and political instability, you know, who the very vulnerable people are, and being able to give voice to those people, to the whole team involved, is really comprised of people who identify in that way. And so that's been picked up through the Riser program, which is through Alliance Theater here in Atlanta. And so we were one of 3 projects that were picked.
That's
So,
incredible. Wow. Congratulations.
Exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, Alliance is a great theater. Yeah, that's awesome. So what Vandellous, you talked about like being on stage again in front of a live audience.
Yes.
What was that feeling like?
It was so good. You know, I mean, I've been doing burlesque for over 10 years. I started in about 2010. But when I moved here, it was like, who are you? Right? And I realized that what I initially did, and Shellie kind of was talking about the sort of the like I was doing a lot of comedy stuff, and I have that side. But lately I've been diving a lot more deeply into the stuff that I really like want to say and really want to explore. Blood Bride being one of them. And that's been influencing a lot of the work that I've been creating sort of now not post-pandemic, but in front of people since the pandemic. And it's you know, the audience has been so excited to get back and to have that, as well as much as the performers are excited to be back in front of audiences. So it's very affirming, especially in a place like Atlanta that can be siloed. Like sometimes it's hard to hear about something that's happening over there, but it's very affirming to go like live performance has a place still. I love film. I love being able to edit performances and things together, but also, you know, live has a unique quality and unique element, and humans need to leave their home and sit in a room together and to be able to have that real exchange. And so there's something really special about being able to come back and have that real again instead of just a memory.
Yeah, right. What about you, Caroline? What do you remember the first time you got back in front of a live audience?
The first time I got back in front of a live audience, like it was at an open mic probably, but like I feel the more empowering, more beautiful experience was actually when I auditioned in person again for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like I had mainly just been like doing a bunch of self tapes, and like you're like, oh, self tapes are great until you're on like the 10th take and you just despise yourself you've ever done. But I had to fly to D.C. for a callback for something, and it was the first time I had been in like done a live audition in like so long, and I didn't. I was like, wow, this is infinitely better than doing a self tape again and again, because I didn't realize until then how much I missed that human connection of just like being in a room with people and just talking with people.
Right. Yeah, I think I referenced that Target cashier being my audience member. And she gave me a choice. She's like, you can do self-checkout or you can come into my line. And I was like, I'm going to come into your line. I need to talk to somebody. Let's talk about cornbread for 10 minutes.
Like, give me that affirmation that I'm funny. Give it that
right. And then I riffed. Yes. Yeah. I also did an open mic, and it was hard because right before the pandemic, I had all this new material that literally I'd started workshopping. I think I went to 1 or 2 shows. And then when everything went virtual, I didn't want to do my new material. Number one, most of the virtual shows I had were for Jewish organizations, and my new material is a little dirty.
Yeah.
So, and then I also wanted to do stuff that I knew I was gonna, I knew where the laughs were gonna come. So, but getting back and being in front of an audience, even though it was just 3 minutes, I was like, this is like an addiction, that feeling of the feeling of positive feedback and reinforcement. I think that's one of the reasons why we do what we do. Just
for like community, like that immediate, oh, they laughed me, they like me. So
yeah. So we've got about 5 more minutes of our live stream left, and everyone wants to know, how can they find you outside of these boxes? Tell us, everyone. We're going to go around and everyone's going to say how we can find Shellie. If you I know you just shared or we have a little chat. But why don't you tell everyone how they can, if they want to find you, whether it's for that scholarship or find out what you're up to.
Sure. So let's see. On Facebook, you can find me under Shellie Schmals, and I've got my Facebook page, Shellie Schmals, and my other Facebook page, Shellie Schmals. Whatever. You can find me on LinkedIn under Shellie Schmals. You can find me on Twitter under Shellie Schmals, and then you can find me on Instagram under Von Schmals, because my original last name before it was eaten up and chopped up at Ellis Island is Von Schmalhausen. So my original, awesome. Yeah, of the small house. And so my original burlesque moniker was Baroness von Schmalhausen.
Yeah.
So probably the easiest and the one I'm most responsive is Von Schmals.
Okay.
So Instagram.
Vandellous, how can we find you? Yes, I exist on Facebook and Instagram. So you can find me at Vandellous, and that is, I'm a one-name performer. Of course, I do have an account on Facebook that is Frankie Vandellous, because you have to have 2 names to be a person. And then also Burning Bones Physical Theater. I am Canadian, so I do spell it theater with an R-E. And I know. And then also my teaching business is Vibrant Center for Voice and Movement. And you can also just find the whole thing on my website at Frankie Mullenix, that's my legal last name, .com.
Caroline, tell us all your info.
I mean, if you need to find me, just go to your nearby Trader Joe's. You'll probably find me there. We were just talking about traders before this. Facebook, Caroline Hawthorne. I need to change all my Twitter and Instagram names because it's all over the place. Instagram is Caroline E. Hawthorne. Twitter is at Carol the Comic. My TikTok is at Too Hot for Hawthorne. But if you can't remember any of that, I barely remember any of it. You can just look up my website, www.carolinehawthorne.com, and you'll find everything.
And you can find me. Most of my social handles are Mall of Amanda. Come see what's in store. And my podcast, Sis and Tell, if you'd like to follow the misadventures of 2 Southern Jewish sisters telling you what their life was like in the 80s in Alabama, come listen to us. It's like you're a part of the Goldstein family. And you can go to mallofamanda.com and see I have a web series called Mom Cam in the Minivan. Basically, it's me in a minivan. We got a lot of cup holders, so they're good. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Q&A. Thank you to all of our panelists. Rusty is in the air somewhere or still being frisked by the TSA. We're not really sure. Shellie, are there any last words that you would like to share?
Just thank you to everybody. Thank you to the Philadelphia Jewish Film and Media. Thank you to my Roxie Roz producers, Royal T and Emily Rose, to our production team, Matthew Wolf and Reagan Smith and Brandon Campbell. If you saw all that beautiful animation, that's all Brandon. He's so fantastic. And Kimber Von Gore, or Kimber Portman Reynolds. She's the one who did all of our makeup. And to you, Amanda, because not only did Amanda perform, but she also was our comedy producer and our writer for everything. So it's her magical words that our Roxie Roz host spoke. And just, thank you to everybody just for, being here. Just appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the festival.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
We have to keep waving till Olivia ends it. Thank you, Olivia.